fan of wrestling show. I'm the big beefy boy, Shaz Beef, and I'm joined by my fellow old buck in Morro. How are you, good sir? All Elite Morro is out.
What?
All
Elite Morro, the first episode. You came up with that name, and I really like it.
I think, and it's not just All Elite Wrestling, is it?
No.
You'll be kind of delving into different topics.
A few things lined up.
Whispering away.
I thought, because remember I did a little test run with you, and you're like, you're whispering, and I was like, okay, right, I just won't whisper when I record.
Yeah.
So then I pressed record, and in my head,
oh wait, it's like AEW ASMR.
Yeah, maybe that's what I should go for.
No, don't do that.
Might be my
I
niche.
hate ASMR.
Might be my niche.
And I hate AEW. I don't.
Might be my niche.
Yeah, I got more stick online.
I did.
Yeah,
I haven't been active online much this week.
I noticed that. Yeah.
I had a busy week, Shannon. Busy week.
On the TikToks and all that kind of stuff.
I was at Stag in London last weekend.
How'd that go?
Fantastic weekend.
You missed the debut of Frankie Vendetta.
I missed the debut of Frankie Vendetta. I wish I knew who that guy was.
Yeah, he's a handsome chap.
He's a handsome devil, isn't he? He's a handsome old devil.
Yeah, lots of content. We have OTT Insider, which is our in-universe.
I'm banned from it.
Yeah, you got the boot. You just didn't want to be around Tate, to be fair. He's a gobshite.
Fuck that dude.
Yeah, so that's been released by the time you're watching this as well. So, we're fucking busy out, man.
I'm recording another All Elite Morrow tonight or tomorrow.
Oh.
See what I did there?
I'll try and get it up. Because your name. I like it, yeah. A lot of people sounded off about last week's podcast. I didn't get to cut up many clips, but the two that I did cut up were you saying that AEW is close in the ratings to Raw.
That was people. This is fucking media literacy 101 here. A lot of people were responding as if I said AEW is beating Dynamite is beating
You
Raw.
said it was pretty close.
It is pretty close. That's not what
Other
I
people
said.
are saying it's not even beaten next.
It is beaten next.
NXT.
It's beaten next in the actual cable rankings on the sheets there, like the things they release.
Okay.
So, like, there's no... See, this is a big problem with fucking media literacy. Anyway. People see a number, 700,000 versus 600,000. That's not the important number. The important number is the next number, 0. whatever. Whichever one of them is higher is more important. And also, if it's on cable versus network.
Why is that more important? The more people that are watching, the better, right?
No, because America doesn't care about people over the age of 55. Or actually 49.
So your argument is that there's actually more people watching NXT.
Yes.
But if you're over the age of 55, you don't count.
You don't matter.
That's your argument.
No, that's the truth. That's how let's say, right, every day there's a league table released of the shows of the day before.
It's some mad mathematics, man.
It's not mad mathematics. So all money that, like, why isn't NXT
demo?
Yeah, why isn't NXT getting the same money that AEW is getting?
Because the demographic is watching.
Yes.
They're the people that'll spend.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's what the value comes from.
And talking about the
and
spending
also the
as
AEW
well,
one doesn't count the max viewers.
Our tickets, price tickets, when we put that clip up as well, we got an overwhelmingly positive response.
We did for that
one.
one.
Bar a few people are like, well, why would you go to Boo? And I was like, that's not what I said. I said, if they announce that...
You broke the record. We ripped you off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other people are like, well, they have a big production and all that. And I'm like, I'm not disputing that.
They're announcing quarterly record profits. The production doesn't matter a fuck. What do people think it costs to run one show?
Yeah.
People are stupid, Shane. They're not eking out a profit. They're not picking those ticket prices to eke out a profit. They're announcing record profits. This is another thing that drove me mental about the response to this as well. Is WWE's financials are public.
Yeah.
Any of these idiots can look this shit up. Ratings, for the most part, not as clear in the streaming era, but ratings are also public. All the information is there. All these idiots that are responding, arguing with us, can look this shit up.
Well, our last episode has WWE sold out. It seemed to have done well. Lots of people getting in on the comments, which is what we want, which helps. Like you can see, I know the numbers aren't big on YouTube. They're quite decent on audio platforms and stuff.
Yeah, the various audio platforms.
Well, you can just look at the numbers. I know it's only 300 views or whatever, but we appreciate every single one of them. Some of them of our older podcast was like 75 views and stuff. So
it was a long time we were hovering around 75 on YouTube.
Yeah. Hi lads, here's a comment. That's from Burn IE 1127.
Soundbar 90.
That's unreal. Like, thank you so much.
I think I know who that is.
Jamie B67. Great show as always, lads. Money in the Bank last night was absolutely brutal for advertising. The Fireball fucking thing. Ladders are now sponsored. Briefcase sponsored. Before the end of the year, there'll be a sponsored title. Also, AEW are currently doing £30 tickets for the Glasgow show. On football kits, I always buy Celtic tops without the sponsors.
Yeah, I used to buy the Barcelona ones.
I used to hate the way you couldn't buy the Irish jersey without the big Aircom.
Opal or Aircom or...
I didn't mind the Opal because it blended in.
But the Aircom one stood out like a sore thumb.
Hell, I was even upset when the company went public. That's from Hector Savage.
Jesus.
What a name.
Hector, what age are you, man?
He says...
you must be our vintage.
Everything became about their responsibilities to their shareholders. A lot of fun went out of it as a result. Well done, lads, from Irish Wrestle Talk. Legend.
Thank you.
And also, inside Brian's mind, Brian Maxwell says, your hair is massive, love. They're only jealous. Less is Morro.
Less is Morro. That was my favourite comment. You screenshotted that and sent it to me.
That popped me.
I went in to give that one a like.
Yeah.
That was about my only minutes online all week.
Talking about, say, Money in the Bank, I want to talk about Chad Gable's performance that night. Because
that day in general.
Yeah. Because, and this will feed into the broader conversation that we're going to have.
MVP.
He needs to get a rocket strapped to him. Did you watch the match with Vikingo?
I watched the match with Vikingo.
Did you enjoy the match with Vikingo?
I enjoyed the match with Vikingo.
And the bump that he took off the ladder from LA Knight, they nearly cracked his head off that.
Off the other ladder, yeah.
Chad Gable is just a phenom.
Awesome. Yeah, he's awesome.
We've
been saying that for a long time, though.
A lot of people have. I remember being like so enamored with American Alpha in NXT, their match with DIY, considered the experience that they had beforehand.
Do you remember when we did the Wyatt 6 episode like a year ago?
Yeah.
And
Gable got absolutely murked.
That was my biggest problem with that.
Because he had just signed a new contract.
And things were going. He had that great program with Gunther. And then he just
gave it to Sammy.
They gave it to Sammy instead. But Chad had done the work for, like, that wasn't Sammy's story. Sammy's story was world title Bloodline.
Yeah.
Chad's story was the Intercontinental title at the time. And poor Chad got screwed out of that. And it drove me up the wall. And then they stick him off in the Wyatt 6 stuff. And, like, it's taken him a while to recover. But, like, look, I hate the El Grande Americano stuff.
Yeah,
and
I'm
just
not a big fan of it.
And it actually... Do you know what? It actively hurts his in-ring performance because he has a really good match. He's never had a bad match as El Grande Americano. But the finishes are always crap because he's doing that loaded mask gimmick.
Yeah.
So the finish, it looks crap. So that, like, it hurts the overall perception of the match then.
Plus he's wearing Chad Gable boots.
That's so funny, CG.
Yeah.
But I seen someone else
Chelsea
Green. Good cover, Chelsea.
Very funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so did you watch Worlds Collide in general? Did you watch the whole pay-per-view?
Yes, I watched the whole pay-per-view.
Some good, some really good.
Yeah, it was a good pay-per-view.
Are you a fan of Mr. Iguana? He seems to be...
Here, like, Mr. Iguana... Mexicans aren't even a fan of Mr. Iguana.
No?
He's like Danhausen. You know what I mean? He doesn't do a whole lot in AAA. Well, he gets a good few funny spots on the show, like.
Well,
Danhausen's probably unfair. Like, you know, Danhausen literally does nothing. Mr. Iguana does slightly more than.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Danhausen, and the reason why I want to tie this in with, say, the AAA pay-per-view.
I have no idea where we're going.
Is the Indies.
Yeah, now I know where
now
we're going.
Now you know it, yeah. So, So I kind of want to get into the independent wrestling scene and the effect that mainstream companies have on it. Now, maybe it would be remiss of me to say AAA is an indie, but
it's not an indie.
It's
but
not.
It's going to be an indie.
Yeah,
Under
I
control.
get what you're saying. Like, Evolve was an indie, and I want to talk about indie's effect on mainstream wrestling, and also the repercussions that mainstream wrestling has on indie wrestling.
Yeah.
Would you classify the territories as like?
It's
indies?
like the precursor to indies.
Yeah.
They're not in indies, but you can draw parallels between the modern day indie scene and wrestling as a territory system.
Except with the territory system that, you know, they would have had television.
Like that. There is key differences, but you can draw parallels.
But like the same process of hoovering up talent. And obviously, you know, you have the smaller leagues and the big leagues. It happens in all sport, and people are getting losing out. But it affects the quality of the smaller leagues, and then how cyclical the independent wrestling scene can be. And you notice that with Vince practically killing the territories. He's going around to every territory. He's picking up all their big names, and then he's presenting them all as one.
Putting them under exclusive contracts.
Yeah. And the knock-on effect then that had on wrestling for years, we kind of touched upon it on the New Generation podcast, was the reason why the New Generation so maybe, how do you say, like, because I like the parts of the New Generation, but like it's not as well revered as other iterations. Is it because you didn't have the likes of Bret Hart in Stampede Wrestling beforehand? You didn't have the likes of, any independent really wrestling going on, JYD and, all those people that honed their craft before they got to the big leagues.
Yeah.
It was kind of, they were working in lesser places as opposed to a world-class championship wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Well, like, I suppose a lot of the New Generation were, a lot of the guys they brought in those gimmicks, and you touched on this, were actually a lot of seasoned veterans.
Well, when they brought in, say, Dirty White Boy as TL Hopper, and he was down in like Smoky Mountain and stuff like that. Smoky Mountain kind of kept the flag going for quite a while.
Yeah, sure, they were an indie, really. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like a pretty decent indie who gave a lot of young up-and-comers.
But they were signed with WWE, so in a way that WWE could send guys there, and Vince did his first heel character, I think, in
Smoky Mountain. He did, yeah.
But the repercussions that Vince had of killing the territories, you only really had two major promotions in WCW and WWF at the time.
Yeah, and WCW was an extension of kind of Jim Crockett having to sell to Turner in order to survive. They were basically the last real territory standing.
Like, they were coasting on for a long time on taking in, say, ex-WWE cast-off or WWF cast-off and maybe the guys that they pushed in a previous generation.
Are we talking about WCW here?
Yeah.
Sorry, attachment Jesse P.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were, yeah.
And you needed something like an ECW to start up, and basically they were an independent promotion also. If you needed someone like ECW to start up, so they had that feeder system.
And also, ECW probably, when you kind of posited an interesting talking point there at the start when you said about how indies affect the actual mainstream companies.
Yeah.
ECW stylistically had a huge effect on what ended up happening in the mainstream companies afterwards.
Yeah.
When WWE in particular started adopting a lot of an ECW style on TV, that actually turned around then and kind of killed ECW, because now their style was no longer
the alternative.
The alternative, it had become the mainstream style, so nobody needed to go seek ECW in order to get their fix for a style of wrestling that they were looking for.
What I'm trying to get at is, when you dip into that talent pool so often, like the WCWs did, like the WWFs did, you don't give room for the next generation to flourish. So we've seen that with the territories. That's why I'm tying in. They took everyone from their territories. The territories died. They took everyone from ECW, which is great for... you would never tell someone, don't take more money.
For the workers themselves, a lot of them, ended up getting paid. Now, there was... the only problem is...
You take everyone from ECW... You take their Tazes, you take the Dudley Boys, you take the Ravens, you take the Mike Awesomes while he's the champion. Yeah. Well, the Rob Van Dam
comes later.
Rob stayed till the end. You take the Rhinos, you take all these people from these promotions. They're kind of not left with a lot, and that's why Just Incredible is like the ECW champion. You know what I mean? And no one's probably at that time paying for Just Incredible when you had someone like Mike Awesome.
Probably say the same even for like Tyler Black in Ring of Honor 8, 9, 10 years.
We'll get to that.
We'll get
and the reason why I'm kind of jumping ahead from the territories to the ECW stuff is because that's when I was growing up.
Yeah. Well, look, there's a book, there's an audio book on fucking Spotify called Death of the Territories. If you want to relive 60s, 70s, 80s and Vince McMahon clearing out territories, just listen to that. But it stops, late 80s, early 90s. We can kind of pick up from there. with ECW.
And like that, ultimately, that and obviously Paul Heyman has a lot to blame, and TNN or Spike or whatever TV promotion that he was with that went and got Raw. Like that, there's a lot to blame in that, but like taking their top stars, and then they had to like, it was a long time, I think, for WWE to maybe see the effects that would have.
In what way?
Like, so you had OVW in ECW closed down in 2001. So does WCW, which is another primetime player. So WWF is
it's the only game in town.
Yeah, is the big game in town. So they already had their class that would have come up, say in 2000, 2002. So you had
the Brock, Randy, Cena,
Batista, Shelton Benjamin kind of thing. But after a while, it seemed like there was a lull of talent.
Well, no, this is what I find interesting, right? I don't think there was a lull of talent. I think there was almost Vince changed his ideas on hiring.
Okay.
Right, because
it was long touted that, say, when TNA started up as an alternative, like Vince didn't want anything to, like he didn't like taking their stars. We've seen it when Chris Harris came over, to a lesser extent. Monty Brown, Marcus Corvon, when he came over, I know he left after a while. But yeah, Vince didn't really dip into that talent pool that much.
Like if you think of like, if we look at wrestling today, right, the wrestling we see on TV today, where did that style originate?
I would argue is it the like kind of Californian style of wrestling?
You could say PWG in early 2010s. You could probably
you could
tie that back to Ring of Honor.
You could
2005.
tie it back to, say, maybe Amazing Red.
Yeah,
and the work that he was doing.
That's, I would say, like that Ring of Honor early 2000s up to 2005-06, and then Pro Wrestling Noah 2005 with that kind of striking battle type offense with Kenta and Marufuji, and because Ring of Honor took a lot of what the Ring of Honor top guys, Danielson, Nigel McGuinness and all, they were kind of influenced by like worldwide wrestling, you know what I mean? And you started in Ring of Honor get this kind of confluence of different styles. And like really like Ring of Honor 05 to probably, or 04 maybe to 08, 09 is what I would think is kind of the birth of what we now watch in ring for the most part.
Yeah.
And like, because that obviously, you know, spread to PWG and all these places, and then spread, you know, it mixed in with Japanese strong style, and it all became, we now have this kind of global wrestling product, you know? Like if you watch a New Japan show versus if you watch some show in America, it could be WWE or AEW, there'll still be, WWE still have more of its in-house style, but you will get New Japan or Japanese wrestling in way more than before.
What I'm trying to get at is when there's a thriving independent scene. You mentioned Ring of Honor, and I was exposed to like CZW. I really, really love CZW, TNA to another degree as well. When you get that thriving scene, like you're going to get the stars of the future, and that, like, when if WWE fostered that, which they seem to be sometimes doing, and then sometimes it's to stop something.
Yeah, it's well, a lot of the time it's to stop something. It's to stop a movement. It's to kind of stamp their style on it, and I think we can really get onto that when we get to the modern, right up to the modern day of this conversation. But like, if you look at Ring of Honor mid 2000s, Danielson, Punk,
Joe.
Styles, Tyler Black, a little bit later. Homicide, Xavier, Low Key.
I'm just naming names.
Yeah, I know, but they're so awesome. Like
Jack Evans.
Like there's so much cool shit happening there. Like you look today, over the last decade and a half, some of the biggest stars that WWE had came from there. CM Punk, like, Danielson, Styles.
Where is that happening now? That's like the full effect that it's having. WWE from taking these stars and then the scene dying. Like we've seen, like all these promotions end up fucking losing so much steam or end up dying. Like Ring of Honor for
It's dead. But that Ring of Honor is dead. Like Ring of Honor was gone if Tony didn't buy it. It was closing its doors.
Yeah.
It was just going to sell the library to Vince.
WWE,
Yeah. And Tony said, "Oh fuck it, I'll buy it and we'll just do something with it." Now, like obviously, I watched some modern Ring of Honor, but I don't think it is what it used to be like. It's not. You know what I mean? It's just a kind of a glorified B show or C show even.
Which is sad. I don't know. Like it I'm trying to strike the balance between like WWE fostering an independent scene and then WWE actively like.
I don't think there's such a thing as WWE fostering an independent scene.
No. Like, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but we need to get to like NXT UK.
That's the biggest thing. Like that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing of them not fostering an independent scene.
But at the time, it seemed like
that they were going to.
That they were fostering an independent scene.
Did it seem like it to you?
Yeah, to me, because you were seeing WWE stars, and we have seen WWE stars in independence.
Yeah.
And you would see Triple H show up on Insane Championship Pro Wrestling,
ICW,
and you would see, obviously JD McDonough now in OTT. Apparently NXT UK was brought up to Battle World of Sport.
Yeah, that's like a super interesting point, right? It's not just World of Sport. So World of Sport was coming back onto ITV, right? And ITV is a pretty big channel. The British independent scene had basically had its glory period there. I think Rev Pro put fucking 8,000 people in a building or something crazy.
Yeah, Insane Championship Wrestling.
They were doing 2, 3, 4,000. Progress were doing thousands.
8,000.
They might have done 8,000. Progress were doing thousands up and around Midlands, Liverpool, up around there. Rev Pro were down in London doing
whatever they were
5, 6, 7, 8,000 again. You had Southern Championship Wrestling or something. They were doing a couple. Like, they were small indie. You had, like, Mark Andrews and them guys there. They were doing a couple of thousand. You had multiple indies in England that were all doing thousands on a given weekend. But think of England geographically, right? It's very easy to get around England.
65 million people.
It's a big population for the size of the place. A lot of metropolitan centres. A lot of pretty big cities. Not huge, but, a lot of cities with 200 to 300,000 people. So all of these places had their own little independent scenes going on. So if you're like a young independent wrestler, you can wrestle probably on 5 times over 3 days of the weekend by traveling around to different ones. And that scene had kind of remained untouched for a long time from outsiders picking talent. So it had fostered by the kind of mid-2010s, we'll say 2016, 2017, 2018, and we've seen this with OTT in Ireland, the talent that was coming in. Zach Gibson there as champion. He did a lot of stuff on the British independent scene.
He was an OTT champion.
Sorry, not where was he? He was Rev Pro, was it?
Yeah, he was tag team champion in OTT.
I think he was Rev Pro champion then, around a similar time.
But like Walter,
he coming from Germany, but they had WXW in Germany as well.
And then you were seeing like Keith Lee and all these people that were big.
And so they were coming over and wrestling local talent.
Yeah, Matt Riddle.
And then Rev Pro and Progress both kind of, particularly Rev Pro, fostered a great relationship with New Japan. And then they'd come over on tour and they'd end up at Rev Pro, and one night they'd end up, Ishii'd be on a...
Sure, Naito was in OTC.
Naito was there, Ishii was there a couple of times, Juice Robinson, Suzuki. But they were a lot of the time coming in. Liger was there. They were a lot of time... Like Liger, this is my point, is that they were coming in wrestling local talent.
Into a hotbed.
A hotbed, wrestling local talent. And the scene exploded. Look at the depth of talent that was in the UK and Ireland 2016, 2017. It was insane.
So it was all hoovered up.
So then ITV are starting...
Or look at What Culture Pro Wrestling.
Oh, massive. They had their own frigging thing. They did a World Cup with Rey Mysterio and all these guys.
Kurt Angle was there. Cody Rhodes was there. I heard, the way their whole business model was going to be centered around YouTube.
Yeah.
Like... maybe it's a conspiracy, but WWE wanted, say, wrestling to be classified as like violence on YouTube, so they would be demonetized.
That doesn't surprise me
Because the Adpocalypse included that, or whatever.
they got reefed by the Adpocalypse.
Absolutely reefed.
That killed their whole thing. Like
Also, the business model of bringing in the likes of Rey Mysterio and stuff, like
Kurt Angle,
yeah,
Cody
there's
Rhodes.
no way
Cody
they're
wasn't.
He wasn't the American Nightmare that we know now.
Yeah, but he still would have cost a pretty penny at the time. And so you had this like thriving hotbed, and then word comes out that World of Sport is coming back, which was a huge wrestling show that used to be on British TV way back 70s, 80s, early 90s. I think it ended
It early 90s.
I think it ended in like 91 or something.
Did it?
No, I think by that time it was
pretty bad.
pretty dead. And no, I could be wrong on the years there. But so World of Sport.
Why was it dead? Could it have been the influx of American wrestling on TV and Sky?
Because Sky has started their. It could be. Now, I don't know enough to declare definitively that SummerSlam 92 killed World of Sport, you know what I mean? But clip it just that part and say that it did. So then World of Sport is coming back, but like NXT UK gets announced then and starts signing all these guys to exclusive contracts.
Well, exclusive.
I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that, right? So what they did first, the precursor to them announcing NXT UK, is they started doing local partnerships. And ICW and Progress were the two main local partnerships that they cultivated, right? And it was offered to Rev Pro as well. But your man there, I think Andy Quidlin, I can't pronounce his name, he turned it down because he was happy with his New Japan partnership.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening is all these guys who were signed to NXT UK initially weren't exclusive to NXT UK. They could also work ICW, Progress, or any kind of company that was okayed by WWE.
It's kind of similar to what they're doing now.
Kind of similar, yeah. Very similar, more or less. And so what ends up happening then, though, is once they start doing, World of Sport comes along, ends up with a few guys. Osprey was on a couple of episodes of it. But it ends up not with no access to a lot of the talent who had built the scene in the previous 4 or 5 years. And then when NXT UK starts shooting regular TV, a lot of those guys are no longer available to the ICWs in Progress.
Yeah.
But they had, like WWE had guys on the ground who were deciding finishes and deciding who's getting pushed and this kind of stuff. So like any plans that ICW or Progress might have had are now subject to approval.
Well, that's been talked about WWID talent as well, and Gabe Sapolsky pretty much came out and said that's not the case.
No, we'll get to that when we get more modern, but that's a two-pronged thing. It's Gabe Sapolsky is right and wrong.
Okay.
He's choosing his answer very carefully.
Okay.
Yeah. But he is right, but he's also, in some ways, a little bit wrong. We'll get into that when we get further. So, so then, we get NXT UK, and there was some brilliant episodes of NXT UK.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the best. I think you wouldn't have been in a group chat at the time. I didn't know you.
No.
But I remember going, lads, this is like the best weekly television show.
It was.
Right now.
Yeah,
and that included like AEW or whatever.
For about, I'd say, the latter half of 2019-ish, around then.
Yeah, I remember watching it going, this is a fucking breeze to watch.
Easy to watch. Great presentation.
And especially during COVID, I thought it was quite...
I thought AEW had a great run during COVID.
Yeah, but I thought so did
NXT UK.
NXT UK was only like an hour long.
It was better
digestible.
than any of the WWE
And then you're
stuff.
watching like Dragunov and Walter.
Remember that match?
Oh my.
45 minutes.
Word.
And because the place was empty, it was one of the only matches. There was a couple of matches that I watched during COVID where the empty
suited it. Yeah, because you could hear everything.
I remember Danielson had a match on SmackDown or something.
Right.
And it was similar.
I remember feeling the same with Kevin Owens and Rollins at WrestleMania 36, because that was one of the first.
That was literally the first big show.
As it happened. Yeah. And just hearing them slap each other, I was like, this is so much more visceral. Yeah.
Because Walter Dragunov, though, was the peak of. There was a match that took place in Japan that could only have been done with no audience as well. And I was like, I can't remember who was working. I think it was Noah, and the two guys did like an obscene length of stare down without touching each other,
and no crowd,
and it was honestly, when I say obscene length, it was like 25 minutes. Like,
Just staring at each other.
Just staring at each other. And then they beat the shit out of each other, and it was really loud. You could never have done that with a crowd there.
The crowd would be getting bored.
The crowd would have revolted, like. But yeah, but then so NXT UK hoovers up the talent, but also there's other factors that play.
So why did the UK scene get so hot?
Because it hadn't been touched.
Was it because there was no second like big promotion in terms of like WWE? The knock-on effect of like the Irish scene got set up in 2002? Like IWW ran into 2002, so like a school got set up around that time. So you're starting to see the fruits of that labour. I would imagine a lot more UK schools would be set up. So you're starting to see the fruits of that labour. I remember FWA, the wrestling channel used to put on like British Uprising. Alex Shane was there.
They had NWA UK.
Yeah, they brought like FWA. The Uprising episodes are on YouTube. They're fun to watch. You watch a bit of Hay Advancing or Paul Burchill
Paul Burchill was deadly, like.
But like I remember that being so exciting at the time. So obviously there was a bit of a scene then. There was like 1PW. They were bringing over Steve Corino and Abyss. They were releasing DVDs.
1PW used to sell mad tickets in that Doncaster Dome, like.
Yeah.
They used to nearly sell that place out, like.
Yeah.
But then TNA had a really smart strategy of doing tours. Like TNA used to sell more tickets in England than they did in...
TNA sold out like the National Stadium. I seen in Dublin where OTT wrestle.
Yeah.
I seen Kurt Angle go up against AJ Styles
in that building, like.
Yeah, and I think Mick Foley special guest referee.
That's over 2,000 to sell that place
2,200. But then they went to the 3 Arena and I seen like a 6-man tag that had like Scott Steiner and Booker T in it and stuff.
Yeah, what to do? They probably did 5,000 or 6,000 there.
Yeah, they did a good few.
Because there was...
But that's around 29 maybe? Or 2009,
because there was talk at one stage internally in TNA of just uprooting the promotion and being a UK promotion because they had such success selling tickets there.
Yeah, Ring of Honor did quite well in the UK as well. Like Nigel McGuinness, I remember did like
their Liverpool show.
Yeah,
that was a big show. They did very good tickets at that.
But like that was American companies coming over, and then you just had maybe one big UK company until all like so many
start springing up everywhere.
But like why was it that? So why did the scene get so hot?
Well, that's what you said, right? So you had like all these
American
schools,
wrestling got hot as well.
Well, like you have to think, right? When did American wrestling get super, super hot in our part of the world?
What do you mean?
Like when did
2001,
99 to 2001ish?
Like the Attitude Era.
Yeah, Attitude Era, and so all these kids who are watching the Attitude Era then want to be a wrestler. I have nowhere to go. Schools started springing up. Backyard wrestling started springing up. And it takes time for that to like start to filter through to a scene.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that in like early 2010s, like 10 to 12 years after the hottest period of wrestling, particularly for us and our access to it on TV.
That's why it's like a pendulum though. Like it's like WWE is good for the scene because it helps create fans who then go on to be wrestlers, who then go on to be signed.
They're all signed.
You know, they're all signed. So you're like, the pendulum is staying over here. Yeah. It's like someone had it, and then it's like a force starts dragging it back when more fans get created who become wrestlers, and and now that there's so many schools, like there's so many workers, that there's obviously less fans because they're all workers now.
Yeah, that's fair. You're always trying to get me to go trend. I'm like, no,
I want to be a fan.
I want to sit in the crowd, like. Yeah. I've said this, like, we've had that exact conversation. You were like, do you want to do interviews backstage? I was like, no, I want to sit in the third row and
creamy
drink
fucking
pints. Like, you know? But yeah, so I think that's why. And then also, like as we were saying about, you know, Vince going through periods of not signing indie wrestlers. Particularly if he's not signing indie wrestlers from America, he's certainly not signing indie wrestlers.
Well, he wanted everyone to go through his system, and that's why, I don't know, maybe you see the likes of Sylvain Grenier pop up.
He was very young at the time.
No, well, Rene Dupree was younger.
Sorry, Rene Dupree was 19 when he won the tag title. Is that right?
19.
Some fucking I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was very, very young.
But you didn't see a lot of independent wrestlers coming through. CM Punk obviously being an outlier.
Yeah, like Punk and Danielson and that.
Well, like you look at Drew and Sheamus, like they're the first proper batch to go over from the UK scene. Yeah. As a bit of a tandem.
Yeah.
Obviously Joe Cabrera gets signed. Tron, who was a 7-foot
Prick.
Irish guy. You don't like Joe, no?
No, fuck that guy.
Joe TT.
Joe TT.
Go check out OTT Insider.
Can't believe we gave that guy a live mic here.
Yeah. Yeah, and he never showed his true colours, huh?
Yeah, he was really nice that day, wasn't he? I actually said it after he left behind his back. I wouldn't say it to his face.
He's a big man. He's jacked.
Yeah, he's a big dude. I said it right behind his back. I said, bit too nice for my liking.
But you seen Joe, like, he goes to WWE and then leaves and then comes back and fosters the next generation.
He sets
of
up
people.
his own thing that grew to be there's no doubt that OTT in terms of like eyeballs and ticket sales is the biggest Irish promotion ever. Like,
yeah, well, like you look at, so he, like, before he went to WWE, had American Wrestling Rampage. And that's where
I was at some of those shows.
Yeah, like they brought over Bret Hart and
Sabu
and RVD
Tatanka.
wrestling in Portlaoise.
One of the time I stiffed Tatanka on a tenner.
Boom. But like that, like Paddy Morrow and Sean Maxer Guinness and like, you know,
started in that, didn't they?
Yeah.
I remember seeing Paddy Morrow on a match.
And even here, like Matthew Bullet Smith when he was going up against the Judgment Day, talking about, you know, seeing Jordan and Finn Balor in, like, where are they from? Not Nace.
Bray.
Bray, yeah. Why Nace? Seeing them wrestle there, and then
Is Devlin from Bray as well?
I think so, yeah.
All right.
And then he wanted the Fight Factor school was set up in Bray.
Right.
And then, like, you know, Matthew Bullet Smith wanted to.
What age is Matthew Bullet Smith?
23, I'd say 24.
He's fucking young. Jesus Christ, he's a serious talent.
But, like, you know, Matthew Bullet Smith's could get picked up.
I would be surprised if he's not picked up.
And then he goes over, and then
he comes back and wrestles a young guy in a tag match in 7 years'
young
time.
guy called Shane O'Keefe.
Yeah, who's 50 at the time. He's that young up and comer.
Young whippersnapper. I'd be like your man that was the NWA champion. What's his name? Was it Storm? He lost it to Magnus, I think. He was like 50.
Yeah. What was his name?
Something Storm. No?
James Storm.
No, James Storm is the TNA guy.
Yeah, but there's another one.
Well, anyway, I think we're going a bit off track. What we're talking about, the pendulum swinging. Yeah, so like, why did the UK scene get so hot? So maybe it's because, you know, people grew up loving wrestling and wanted to be a wrestler. And then
also, like, what happened is guys stuck around because they weren't getting signed. And because they had the access to be able to go from Sheffield to Manchester to Liverpool to Newcastle,
it didn't matter as much.
You know, they were able to work multiple indies in a weekend, and they got really, really fucking good because they were working so much. And then the talent that's coming up is now working with these guys who are really good. So it's accelerating their progress.
Yeah. So then everyone gets snapped up,
and that whole progress starts to slow down.
Do you not think, though, like, if it wasn't for COVID, like, I think the scene would be a lot more thriving.
COVID definitely slowed things down.
Like, it slowed, like, it killed
There's
NXT.
something else as well, though.
It killed NXT UK.
There's something else as well.
What?
Speaking out.
Obviously, yeah.
Hurt the perception of British wrestling massively.
100%, yeah.
Look, that was a thing that needed to happen and will actually be good for it in the long run. But it had definitely short-term hurt the depth of talent.
Or why would somebody want to support that business?
Like, it'll take time for that to turn around. But, you know, it rooted out some people who needed rooting out. Therefore, it'll be better for the long run.
Yeah.
And the people who are left in it.
But I think we're starting to see the fruits of that now. Like, I noticed how welcoming the scene is in comparison to when I was in it in 2008. And when I say I was
said that a few times.
I was saying I was in the scene, I wasn't. I was doing a few fucking local tours or whatever. But, like, you know, you
were losing to the Ballymun Bruiser in a dark match consistently.
No, I don't think I ever wrestled a Ballymun Bruiser.
I was trying to think of someone who was around back then that you could job out to.
But, like, even someone like the Ballymun Bruiser, right? They called me Shane the Bruiser because Ballymun Bruiser had left, and they were like,
"We need a bruiser."
Well, no, I think they wanted to piss off Ballymun Bruiser. They wanted to piss off Kev, and you're like, "Why?"
So they gave you the name.
Yeah, the Bruiser, and I was like, "I don't want to be the Bruiser."
Shane the Bruiser.
Shane,
doesn't have the same ring
Shane,
to it.
you're 20 stone.
You're a bruiser.
Yeah.
It also doesn't have the same ring to it as the Ballymun Bruiser.
Yeah, Ballymun Bruiser, man with the golden can. Yep.
Great name.
Even like the IWW stuff, the wrestling channel was so.
That thing was just awesome.
Was so much fun. But I think
I remember watching Ring of Honor out of order on the wrestling channel.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think that guy was the champion last week, and now this guy, and I never seen the match where he dropped the title.
Supercard of Honor.
I'm like, I don't know what's going on here.
I remember Ruckus and like B-Boy and stuff.
Mikey Ruckus, or not Mikey, just Ruckus.
Yeah, just Ruckus from CZW. They had a faction, Blackout. They were a pretty cool faction. Yeah. I had the Backseat Boys in CZW.
The Backseat Boys, they were deadly.
Trent Acid. Yeah. You had, I remember seeing Jody Flesh and Johnny Storm.
Nate Hatred.
Oh, Nick Gage. Obviously, back then he was in the Hatred Club or the Hate Club. Zandig.
John Zandig. He was the owner, wasn't he?
Yeah. Like, I remember watching Cage of Death, Sick Nick Mondo.
And they had like a proper like real life feud at Ring of Honor. Like,
yeah.
They would counter program each other and shit.
IWA Mid-South with Ian Rotten and Chris Hero going up against like,
the Chris Hero CM Punk match in IWA Mid-South was deadly. But sure, was IWA Mid-South as well where one of our favourite matches happened.
Necro Butcher and Samoa Joe.
Yeah, that was IWA Mid-South.
I know. I thought it was the CZW Ring of Honor rivalry.
No, that was...
Because it was in the ECW arena where CZW would have ran.
Yeah. But it was an IWA Mid-South show.
Yeah, which I find
weird.
Nuts. Yeah.
But
like,
love that match.
Is there any, I suppose GCW, and they're like even an indie on like, they're massive.
They're a big indie, but also, right, we're kind of getting to modern day now, really, aren't we?
I think that's where... Yeah, we kind of went through the obligatory, this is what it was like. Now, I hate when you're watching a documentary and you're like,
you have to do all the context.
Yeah, they're like, but before we get to this, we must understand.
Yeah.
And they're like, no! Talk about
context.
the creepy aliens.
It was important to talk about the NXT UK scene because WWE are trying that again.
I would classify that still as modern. So because
true.
You hear them talking about, say, NXT Europe possibly being a thing. Like what's the larger implications of that for not just the independent scene, but for WWE going forward? Because I think we've seen lulls in maybe their talent hiring, how long it took for someone to usurp John Cena as the top guy. Like we talked about Austin's run being so short. Hogan's run was quite long.
I was, Jesus Christ, 8 WrestleManias or whatever.
And they tried to replace him and all that, I suppose.
It took time to replace him.
It took time for the territories, to recover. And by territories, I mean like for WCW to get their shit together and ECW to be formed.
Yeah.
But by, say, killing the Indies, which is the name of today's show, like what will the repercussions be from an independent point of view and from a WWE standpoint and AEW standpoint?
Yeah, see, we live in a very different world now because of AEW. Now,
but I think AEW have some stuff to answer for as well.
This is where I'm getting
in fairness to Tony Khan, he... During COVID, like he was putting on like lots of matches and giving lots of matches to independent talent, so they had a means to make money.
Dark was full of
like 14 matches, and the local workers. We seen Session Martina getting on the card over there.
No, he was good to people.
We seen LJ Cleary and Pac, and I know that wasn't during COVID, but like they were getting showcased on AEW television for the international title or whatever it was called at the time. But like AEW started hoovering up talent that were getting a small bit of buzz, like straight away. And you mentioned Danhausen at the start. He's one of them. They're like, this Danhausen guy...
Like, no offense, Danhausen. He isn't a national TV act.
But like, he was getting
indie buzz.
He was getting massive buzz, and they're like, you're in.
See, this is where we are now, and this is... my opinion, bad.
Like even Jim Cornette liked him.
Like who?
Danhausen.
Cool. Fuck Jim Cornette. And fuck the Undertaker as well. So this is my worry, right? Because what we have now, who are the top indie wrestlers in America at the moment?
Matt Cardona.
Probably.
He's the indie god.
But he's
not an indie wrestler.
Like, he's not an indie wrestler, and he's doing a lot of the bigger indies.
But what do you classify as an indie wrestler?
Like guys like,
like flippity-dippity guys?
No, you have Mad Dog Connolly there who's just in chain masters every 2 weeks beating shit out of people, and he's awesome. Adrian Priest, is great heel on the indies. But like, if you asked me that question 10 years ago, I could have named 20 people.
Yeah, but most of them would have been from like
PWG and stuff, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you'd have, Keith Lee, Matt Riddle, Swerve Strickland,
Dijak, Swerve, Defy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Who's
Darby
that?
Allin even.
Who's that now?
Like, who's that now? Like, the only ones that immediately come to mind for me are like Mad Dog Conley, Adrian Priest. Like, I'm fucking struggling already then after two, like I could have given
like
you...
Brody King gets buzz, snapped
boom.
up.
And it's a race now because you have two companies that need to identify and get talent under contract.
Stephanie McCourt shows up in AEW, boom, in WWE.
Contract. You know what I mean? Like, you'd think that WWE did the real due diligence on her. No, she's class, don't get me wrong. It should have been a contract battle for her, right? But, like, I don't think either company had the time to really sit down and go, like, how good is she really and how far can she go? She just happened to be fucking excellent. And they just both companies had to move fast and offer contracts.
Well, like, it's easy to say that, but then also go, well, Jacob Fatu just pretty much came from MLW.
Yeah, which if you look at the MLW roster now, it's dire. Like,
whereas Hammerstone is gone.
He's back.
Is he back?
Yeah, he's back. But like Hammerstone there, he got his run in TNA and it didn't really work out for him, and maybe he's just not cut out for that the TV level. I don't know enough about him. But like, if you look at, like, if you go back 5 years,
MJF was there.
Jacob Fatu was there. There's someone else that I'm forgetting that.
There's something I kind of like about NLW because I really like Steve Corino, and they like did a War Games match like back in 2004 or something
with Steve Corino. That was a really good match, actually.
Like but like the history of MLW is like MLW dead. And it's back.
That's right. It keeps coming back. Like, sure, they have Dijak there now, and they have Matt Riddle as their top guy, and they're in that. Like,
Baron Corbin showed up.
I think he has like a five appearance deal or something. He's only done one of them.
Cruel?
Yes.
Or Kruger, is it?
Then what's this other guy's name? There was someone there around the same time as Jacob Fatu who's on one of the big companies at the moment doing really well. I can't remember who it was. Like, you go back, remember watching NWA there a few years ago? You had Ricky Starks, you had LA Knight, you had you had Eddie Kingston, and
Trevor
LA
Murdoch.
Well,
I like Trevor Murdoch.
Yeah, look, Trevor Murdoch. So like the indies, like, all that's gone now because you have two companies that feel
like
the need
all in really changed the whole dynamic of everything.
Yeah, it exposed
like the initial, like, like the Bullet Club were an indie thing,
kind of,
and then
New Japan aren't an indie, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but like it cross promoted over into well, NXT were already getting that ball rolling. Like, you look at and the indie guy that got buzzed there immediately in NXT, Matt Riddle, Adam Cole, baby, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong came in.
Finn
for
Balor.
a while. Finn Balor.
Go back further. Sammy and Kevin, like, you know what I mean?
Hideo Itami.
Yeah.
You know, that was like Triple H really. Like, I remember thinking when they signed Mystico, and even Awesome Kong to a degree, just was like, oh, this is interesting because these are people that like have big buzz, and this is outside of what WWE normally do.
Yeah, like Mystico was voted the Wrestling Observer Wrestler of the Year in like 2006, and like, which was essentially unheard of for like a Mexican luchador to be voted by a largely American audience. You know what I mean? In a year where there was some pretty good shit going on, like, so yeah. But I suppose, like, yeah, but now it is a race between AEW and WWE to identify and snap up contracts.
But like, does that help?
Nick Wayne is getting his first professional TV contract at 18. Like, is that good for Nick Wayne?
Yeah, maybe.
Long-term development? I don't think it is.
No.
This is what I think Tony
But
Khan's...
like, look at Tyler Bate.
Man, we haven't seen the dude in fucking years. He's doing jack shit.
Well, like, Tyler Bate, when he was 19, I think.
When he had that match with Pete Dunne on the NXT takeover show.
I think he was 19. Maybe he was a small bit older.
I thought he was even a little bit younger.
But he's been signed with WWE for a long time.
A decade.
Nearly a decade.
I think slightly over a decade.
No. Going back to 2015.
Maybe 2016. 9 years then.
I don't even think it was that. But anyway, he's been signed with WWE for a long time. And someone had put up going, he gave his prime, which I would argue a lot of wrestlers are coming into their prime in their 30s.
He wouldn't really be in his prime yet.
Yeah.
But do you think, right, let's say Tyler Bate gets released next week. How do you think that looks for him? I don't think he gets signed by AEW.
I think he goes to Japan and goes to the independents and just has banger matches, and then they'll want to sign him back. Or
do you think after that long in their system
he can still go?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Like, beast, I don't know. Him and Pete Dunne are animals.
So like when you go back and look at them 7, 8, 9 years ago,
animals.
They're unbelievable. Like, so I don't know if I've ever seen wrestlers that young that good.
And even if they go, like, if they end up leaving WWE, like Pete Dunne has a school now with Zach Gibson and with James Drake. They have a school now, so he's training the next generation of people. I know that's in America, but I think he has something to do with Burning Heart, which is in the UK. Like, that's invaluable stuff. When he comes back, and he's going to train the next generation. So in 5 or 6 years, you're going to see the next Pete Dunne or the next Tyler Bate. And
I know, but I worry that once a lot of people spend too long in WWE, that they start to buy into the WWE style is the best style mentality. When in reality, you need more than just that influence.
Not if that's your goal, though.
I know, but
and
if you want to,
you would say 95% of trainees, their goal is WWE.
I think, personally, right?
The other 5% are like Zack Sabre Jr., who showed up in WWE at one stage.
Not Continental Classic, the Cruiserweight Classic.
Maybe Will Ospreay, his goal mightn't be WWE.
No, see, Will Ospreay's goal is to be the best wrestler in the world.
And he can't do that in WWE.
I don't think you can. I don't think you don't have the freedom. You're not off the leash to do what he can do. Like, I think your goal should be to be the best wrestler in the world.
Well, no, your goal could be WWE.
It might be, but
you look at Mariah May right now. Her goal was always WWE.
Took less money to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so by having people.
I think that's bad for the industry, though.
Why? That's her dream. Why is that bad for the industry? Her dream is being fulfilled.
I just think it's bad for the industry that WWE can get away with paying people less because it's their dream. Like, this is a multi-billion-dollar corporation who are soulless. It's bad for the industry if people take less money to go there. It devalues the work that other people do. Like, she should have been negotiating hard for them to match the AEW offer. And let's say if they didn't, fine, maybe still take it. But fucking push the boat on it, like, you know what I mean?
Maybe she did, though.
We don't know that. But, like, we know that she took less.
Like, because WWE did seemingly have a problem with the contract Swerve got.
Well, they said that AEW paid above the market value. That's their exact words.
But that's good for workers, right?
That's fucking great for workers.
Yeah.
Like, right. The thing there is that comment really pissed me off because the market value is what he gets. That's the market value.
Whatever anyone is willing to pay.
Yeah, that's the market value. They just had it too easy for too long where they set the market value. Swerve got what Swerve deserved to get in his contract. And, you know, WWE want to push the perception that, Tony Khan's money mark, he's overpaying talent. He's not. He just has a different structure for his company. He's using, like, the NFL thing where you pay them half the revenue. It's above WWE's market value when you only pay them 10% of the revenue. They're not going to pay a guy like Swerve.
And it's the way wrestling in general is. But also, like,
AEW shift the market value on WWE, and that's a problem they have. But yeah, like that's my thing is that, like, I hate when I hear people learning WWE style. It drives me mad because, like, wrestling is it's more than that. And if you're like a young worker, learn to be a deadly wrestler. WWE will come calling. You like this thing of
AJ Styles.
They come calling for everyone who's fucking awesome, regardless. And you could argue it's that the ones that they put the most value on are the ones that didn't just learn WWE style. Like, that would be my advice to a young wrestlers. Don't learn WWE style. You
From
look
the
at
vet.
I know I'm not a veteran.
Yet.
37-year-old trainee.
What?
And my point is, right, the hottest free agent in the world last year was Will Ospreay. He got mega money offers from 2 companies because he was the best wrestler in the
Didn't
world.
like the grind.
That man's flying back from England to AEW once a week.
Fair play to him. That's nuts.
Like, he's the best wrestler in the world. And like, when his contract comes up in a few years' time, he's getting mega offers from both companies again. And he's put himself in a position by becoming the best wrestler in the world where he has the 2 big companies.
Do you think MJF made a mistake?
I think he did.
He should have gone.
Not that he should have gone. I think he should have.
He should have gone when he was hot.
Well, unfortunately for him, he started to cool right as the contract came up. The Adam Cole thing happened right as his contract was coming up.
Yeah.
That storyline. And he started to cool a bit, and then he re-signed. I don't know how deep he tested free agency.
He should have gone.
Free agency is great, like, you know, and wrestlers moving is great. Like, when Will Ospreay's contract comes up in a few years' time, he probably has a bit like more than 3 years left on it. But do you think that both companies aren't going to be breaking the bank to try and get
What
him?
do you think one of those people on the independent scene would look like?
What do you mean? Like Will Ospreay?
What he would do now with
Sure, like, I can't even imagine it really.
as an
Like,
independent wrestler.
I can't imagine it.
Like, can you imagine a day where there's like nobody signed to a major company and they're
be the
just
best thing in the
like
world.
that Matt Cardona, what he's doing now? Like,
Yeah.
I know there's talks that he probably wants to go back to WWE.
That man would sell his. I don't know if he has a granny left, but if he did, he'd sell her to get back to WWE. They just don't want him.
I admire him for what he's doing.
Look,
And
he's
plus
turned.
I'm a figure mark anyway. So
Yeah, he's turned a shit situation into a pot of gold. Like,
class. Like, maybe we need more of that.
maybe.
Like, people that aren't signed.
Oh,
And who like
100%
show
free
up in
agents, show
who
up
could show up
everywhere.
in TNA and
Yeah,
could
yeah.
show up in AEW
Like,
and
this-
could if he could make a Royal Rumble appearance.
If I'm AJ Styles and my contract's up soon, I don't sign another full-time contract with anyone.
yeah,
You don't need your AJ fucking Styles.
yeah, but he's not gonna like show up in like Rev Pro and stuff, would he?
No, he doesn't need to show up in Rev Pro. Show up in AEW, do a pay-per-view. Go back to WWE, show up, do a pay-per-view.
WWE
Fuck off to
wouldn't
New
do that.
Japan, do a
What-
pay-per-view.
what-
I think they would. Do you know who they would do it for?
No,
Bryan Danielson.
that'd be cool. I'd love for him to get like a Royal Rumble to Mania run
Like,
and then fuck off.
yeah, and then show up in Japan.
Yeah,
And like, for him, Danielson, like,
Mox
he's...
is doing that Jericho kind of style.
Yeah. When Jericho first became free agent, showed up on All In, showed up in New Japan.
Was just out with WWE,
yeah.
so it kind of seemed fresh.
And Mox did it in 2019 as well.
Do you think the Indies are in a good place then?
I think... Right, so, like, we didn't even get into the WWE AAA stuff, you know what I mean?
That's what I want to talk about. But
Yeah.
because I feel like we're going on for a bit. But like, so WWE and AAA. When you look historically at WWE, maybe getting into bed with different places, well, I don't necessarily know what's come out of that agreement better, if you get me. Nothing. Like, you see WWE and TNA. The TNA World Champion is now, like, you know, an NXT guy.
Yeah.
Worlds Collide, people were saying, oh, WWE won fucking 3-1 or whatever.
Yeah.
They came out on top of that. And then Octagon got buried by Dominic or whatever at Money in the Bank.
Yeah.
Evolve is not the same.
Evolve is just a glossy piece of shit.
ICW is
If
not what it was. And
Who's now the biggest company left in the UK? It's Rev Pro is the only one doing tickets now.
Rev Pro, yeah.
They were the one company that didn't partner with WWE when NXT UK came to town. They stayed with New Japan, and they're the one that survived. That kind of tells you everything you need to know, in my opinion.
WXW signed, like, they had their stuff on the network and everything.
They did,
like,
yeah.
They're doing all right.
Slightly different because
And then you look at
They had their own talent.
there's a lot of independence. Like, my eyes were open when we seen Lingmo, he's an Irish wrestler, and he's doing like television tapings over in New York
yeah,
for a company I've never heard of.
and it'd be a local TV station.
yeah,
and
there's like
Deadly.
French wrestling promotions. You see the Spanish
you see
scene now.
Ugly Blank there.
Yeah.
Spanish scene is heating up.
Like a Kid or Axiom now on WWE, that's really going to help. The Portuguese scene is getting a bit better.
Yeah.
You see the likes of Golden Boy Santos possibly
apparently
getting signed.
now, but Agli Blanc there, who we've seen a lot of in recent years in OTT, he just did the Champions Carnival in All Japan. Agli Blanc. And he did the Champions Carnival, which is their version of the G1. Won by Stan Hansen, Misawa, Kawada, some. Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing, but apparently he had a very good show in there. Now WWE are interested because they want to start the NXT Europe thing. Fair play to him. Hope he gets paid a bag.
So what does NXT Europe look like then for the European independent scene?
Like it would do the same thing. This is my worry with OTT is that if NXT Europe comes in, does it hoover up the Bullet Smiths and Keane Noonans?
Yeah, but that's good for the guys.
In some ways, yes. But like you look at now, like the Coffee Brothers and those guys who got signed.
They're back on the scene though now.
I know, but now they're years older and they weren't on big contracts.
They got to work with The Rock.
Kind of.
At WrestleMania 40.
But like they've kind of disappeared out of sight, out of mind for a good few years, and they're coming back on the scene a little bit older. They didn't get paid that well when they were gone. Those NXT UK guys were on like $50,000 a year. That's like 30.
Nah, they weren't. They're on more than that. I don't know. Conjecture again.
That's true. No, I'm sure some of the top guys there got more, but most of them were on. That's what they were on. $50,000 a year.
NXT Europe is an interesting concept. AAA.
I hate the idea of it.
AAA possibly becoming NXT Mexico.
It'll stay as AAA, but it'll be treated like NXT Mexico.
Because they need to send like a lot of their people to places to work to get better.
So this is kind of where.
Because NXT has become a third brand. The developmental brand has become a third brand. So you have to be really good to get on that.
So now where's your developmental?
So to do NXT level up.
Yeah.
And that's
evolve.
And then evolve.
Yeah.
And then they're like, we don't even have enough time for all these people that we have contracts for. So we need
ship them off to AAA now.
They need to go get reps. Yeah. All right. Here you go. Almost.
Here's the thing about AAA.
Go to Noah.
And then as soon as he starts getting hot and need to put a title on him, they pull him back. We haven't seen him. He got brought back in January. He still hasn't been on TV. What the fuck was that about? The guy was starting to heat up over there. That's the point of sending him there. Get the reps.
Give excursions.
Like we even excursions,
do that. We do that in TW.
Yeah, excursions are like you look at like every top wrestler that's ever come through Japan has gone through an excursion, and it's brilliant for them. Okada came back from a shitstorm in TNA, became the biggest fucking star in Japan. You know, Shota Umino did his excursion in the UK, working indies. Naito went to Mexico. Like, it helps these guys. But that's my biggest problem with Tony Khan, actually, is that he didn't use the relation.
Warhorse.
He didn't. No, fuck Warhorse. He didn't use his. I don't mean fuck Warhorse. I'm sure he's a nice guy. But he didn't use. So he built these great networks of relations with other companies.
Yeah.
And then didn't use them for excursions. Like, imagine he had sent Private Party to New Japan for a couple of tours when they're doing like the Junior Tag League.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just send him fuck off there. No, he's done it now. Kevin Knight went for the best Super Juniors. Nick Wayne went for the best Super Juniors. I'm sure that'll stand to that. Well, Kevin Knight's kind of more developed, but I'm sure that'll stand to Nick Wayne.
Yeah.
You know, working a full tour in Japan. Like you probably end up working 15 matches in a month, like, you know. That can only be good.
I got to end this podcast here.
Okay.
Mrs. has told me your dinner's going cold.
Oh,
and I have to go home and edit Insider. And finish it and get up tonight.
So let's give our final thoughts then. Is AAA going to be done properly, or is it going to hurt the industry in Mexico?
I don't know if AAA was done properly beforehand.
It wasn't done properly.
So like,
my only worry is that they start throwing around loads of money to try and sign CMLL people, and it hurts CMLL then as well. Yeah. You know, and it weakens the overall Mexican scene.
What's your thoughts? Let us know down in the comments and comment. I felt like it took us a while to get into it, but we got into the crux of what we were going to talk about.
Well, I had a lot of prep done on this because it factors into the global war thing that I'm working on for All Elite Morro.
What's the next episode of All Elite Morro? Probably going to be out before this.
I'm looking at the top 10 of the Voices of Wrestling Network's 30 wrestlers under 30.
Okay.
To do it. Well, it's the
Are you
second.
going to buy your own merch? Do you know there's All Elite Morro t-shirts?
There's All Elite Morro t-shirts that I can pay for.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And get a hat.
I get an All Elite Morro hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited for you.
I'll do that.
I get one for me too.
I'll wear my own merch.
Yeah. At every episode. It's been a Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show. Thanks very much for listening to our nonsense. Please like, subscribe to the channel, comment down below. Go and check out All Elite Morro. If you just see him on TikTok, I don't do the man justice. He knows what he's talking about at 95% of the time.
Call me bald.
Call him bald.
Call me. Look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Listen to this.
Let me give it a go. We've been the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show, the Old Bucks. Chat to you next time.